It's always a feeling underneath the thing. Anything that we want in life always can be broken down into feelings. And those feelings and emotions underneath all these things that we dream of and want and work towards are the energy that we can start to cultivate and build regardless of whether it's showing up in our physical reality. Because we can take how we feel into our own hands and we can be the source of our own empowerment. Hello and welcome back to Empowering From Within. It is so excellent to have you here. Today we are going to get into even greater levels of empowerment, harmony, peace, just having an energy that is full of love, in flow, and not hitting up against brick walls by harnessing a couple of energetic laws. The first being the law of opposing forces, which has a lot to do with wanting in our lives and not wanting. And then the law that anything that exists physically must first exist energetically. So I have noticed the law of opposing forces be one of my greatest allies in my health and in my parenting. And just on those two topics, having been someone who has faced near death and their own mortality and repeated and significant health and physical trauma, has set me up to adore and cherish and treasure being a mum so much, because I know how precious life is, and I know and I'm constantly reminded of the gift of life. And I think having that perspective as a parent, it has been a game changer. So I'm very, very grateful for my exact life path, even though on paper you would say, being a triple amputee who is legally blind, who has spent a lot of harrowing days and nights in a hospital, sounds pretty bad. And it has involved a lot of physical suffering and emotional pain and, questioning and finding meaning. But the upside is that I am constantly aware of the fact that I'm alive and that I'm still here. And that I am not only here in my life, but I've created two extraordinary little lives in my sons. And I noticed when they were little, especially in that toddler stage, I'm sure any mum can relate, that when you want them to do something, they will take the complementary position and not want to do that thing. So this is the law of opposing forces at play. You can see it in dating dynamics, you can see it in parenting dynamics, and I'll show you how it's played out in my health dynamics. But anyone who's ever been around a toddler knows that if you really, 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 really want your toddler to speed up and put their shoes on so you can get out the door, they're going to really, 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 really not want to do that. And I remember, if I had to go somewhere and I was leaving instructions for my sister or a family member to hang out with my boys, and they were coming from a place of really wanting the boys to do something or really wanting to take them somewhere, I would always give a little bit of a nudge to just be just be cool. Because if you really, 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 really want them to go to the park, they're going to have no choice but to take up the opposite, complementary energy to that and be a little bit not wanting to go to the park. And almost to the point where my children would get really suspicious if I was pushing an agenda really hard. They'd be like, what's at this park that you're trying to force us to go to? And even now that they're 12 and 11, and they sometimes have these spontaneous, incredible ideas that they need to, go to Sydney or go to the city or just do something where they're very, very, beautiful, innocent, naive, and they don't understand they're going to the city at 8 p.m. on a Friday night to get a piece of Lego that is only in stock in the mall is not as easy as it sounds. And so if I am super duper against energetically, so mentally, physically, emotionally, spiritually, their requests or ideas, the battle that will ensue is so easily avoided by internally shifting and being like, well, would it be a good idea to go to the city at 8 p.m. even though we're all in our pajamas? Like, could I make that happen? And as soon as I release my opposition to whatever wonderful harebrained idea that my boys have at any particular moment during the day, they start to take up more of the other side and start to say, well, actually, we could probably go tomorrow, or maybe I could find something in the garage that would work. Like, it is truly like magic when you drop your opposition. Even if it feels like it is truly the worst idea, it is the most negative thing you can imagine, once you start to drop your opposition and your opposing force to whatever it is that you don't want, the energy can't help but shift. And this has played out in a much more emotional way than just negotiations about Lego in my house. Because one of the things I have desperately not wanted since leaving hospital all those years ago was to completely lose my vision and have zero sight and be totally blind. So I can see about 10% of what an ordinary person with no damage to their corneas can see on any given day. And for me, seeing absolutely nothing but darkness is one of my worst nightmares, which I've tried to reduce in severity, but it is still a nightmare. You know, it's one of those things that does pop up now and again, but has been significantly reduced by understanding the law of opposing forces and understanding that I have been magnetizing the outcome of zero vision to myself so much more rapidly by holding the energetic position of complete opposition and not wanting to go blind. So often our worst fears are drawn to us by being in this field of energy and taking up the position of opposing them. So when I first started to understand the energetic laws and truly integrate and embody them, and I've spoken about this on the podcast before, but it is a wonderful way to explain the law of opposing forces, because I just could not I could not even fathom any single positive that would come out of being completely blind. And when I first started to understand that I needed to change my energy and take up some of the other position, that perhaps losing my vision would be okay. Perhaps I want to lose my vision, because if you really, 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 really want something, it usually doesn't happen. And that is the law of opposing forces, working against us. So I went down the road of learning Braille, learning to walk with a white cane, just to take it off the table as a worst case and a nightmare situation. And I started to embrace all the things that having absolutely no sight would bring into my life, and how there would be upsides. I would gain even more mastery over problem solving, adaptability. Sometimes my intuition is really, really heightened when my vision is lower than normal. And I could see all these genius ways that completely blind people operate in the world. And I started to turn my mind and energy to the fact that I could actually handle it if I went utterly blind and lost all my vision. And taking up that energetic position of not being so afraid of having zero vision freed up such a mental and emotional load that I was carrying around every single second of every single day. But it also improved my health. We all know that stress and living in those survival emotions in fight or flight constantly is terrible for our physical health. And my health improved significantly once I really started to face my fear and my worst nightmare, and take it off the table as being something I had to constantly and conscientiously oppose. And I was constantly at the eye doctor, permanently in a state of fear, just spinning my wheels about losing all my sight. And not only was the law of opposing forces working against me, but the law of focus, the law of preparedness, which we'll get into down the track, but all of these energetic laws were creating this perfect concoction for me to lose more of my vision. And I've been through many, many, many terrifying, panic-stricken eye doctor appointments in my time, but I have not been in one of those appointments since learning and embodying the law of opposing forces for years. And whenever I do have a little bit of a fear pop up, I'm straight onto it with the law of opposing forces. And even though, nobody will tell you this in the mainstream, but facing those things that you so don't want to happen will reduce the likelihood of them happening. It is just the laws of energy. Now, the other way to get around this law for harmony, peace, and empowerment is to understand the second part that I want to talk to you about today, which is that nothing exists physically that hasn't already existed energetically. So if I'm energetically living in panic, fear, worry, stress, concern, that is only going to keep me in resonance with people, situations, and circumstances that maintain and amplify that panic, fear, worry, concern, stress. And it draws within the larger field all the things that maintain that energy and amplify that energy. And it takes a level of courage and perseverance and determination and discipline to get yourself out of that energy and to elevate to the energy that you are trying to embody and draw into your life. And so first, it really helps to get your want down by seeing that there would be positives, because that's another law that we know. There is nothing that is entirely negative, and whatever negatives having zero vision would bring into my life, there would be an equal and opposite amount of positives that would come with it. And finding and being creative enough and willing enough to keep an open mind and find those positives will neutralize your energy and keep you in a state of harmony. And then understanding that for something to exist physically, it first had to exist energetically, is also explained by the studies that show that MRI machines can pick up the energetic patterns of cancer in a human body before it physically manifests. That is an example of the energy coming first before the physical manifestation comes. Even for like this desk to come into physical reality, it first existed as energy, as a mental thought in someone's mind. And then it took physical actions and other energy to manifest it into a physical structure. So knowing that energy comes before the physical can also be used to our advantage for harmony, peace, empowerment, because once we understand what we want, then we can break that down into energetic feelings and energy and start marinating, building, soaking in that energetic frequency and that energetic state to have it then manifest into the physical. So, as an example, bring to mind something that you really, really, really want. Okay, so a lot of people want money. A lot of people want career success. A lot of people want health. Okay, so for me, if I'm doing the example of my eyesight, if I had 100% perfect vision, what are the feelings that I think I would feel if that were to manifest in my physical reality? Well, for me, honestly, it would probably be control. I feel a lot more in control and secure when I can see more and more clearly. it would be a sense of freedom, that I don't need to have aids or rely on other senses to make up for my low vision. It would be a sense of peace, that I don't need to stress. Okay, so I want control, security, freedom, and peace. Those are the feelings underneath the perfect eyesight. For me, this is all very, very particular to each person. You know, people who want money, there's often very contrasting feelings underneath what people think a big fat bank balance will give them, whether it's safety, whether it is feeling good enough, feeling adequate, finally having made it, proving something to someone, being right about, you know, your business idea, feeling successful, feeling recognized, feeling a certain amount of status. It's always a feeling underneath the thing. Anything that we want in life always can be broken down into feelings. And those feelings and emotions underneath all these things that we dream of and want and work towards are the energy that we can start to cultivate and build regardless of whether it's showing up in our physical reality. So I can cultivate the feeling of security and control and freedom I desperately want good eyesight for. And I can start to satisfy and satiate my own desperate longing for these feelings, which then sets me up to be in the energy of feeling free, in control, safe, you know, whatever else it is. And then life has no choice and reality has no choice but to mirror that back to you. So this is how we get ahead of the whole game, because we can take how we feel into our own hands and we can be the source of our own empowerment. We don't need the thing, the money, the eyesight, the people to give us the feelings that ultimately we want. And once we start to satiate, once I start to find evidence and emotionally feel all the ways in which I am already free, safe, in control, and secure, whether I have good eyesight or not, then life has no choice but to mirror back to me. And not only does it take your power out of everything around you, but it also cultivates the exact physical things that you are trying to manifest and create in life. Because the energy comes first and the physical comes second. And it also has a side benefit of getting your want down and reducing your want, because you already feel full to the brim of all these feelings that you desperately need from all the external stuff that you're trying to create and manifest and bring into your life. And so once you start to be your own source of the feelings that you're desperately trying to get from the things outside of you, not only does it massively reduce your want, but you start to feel empowered, unlimited, satiated, and satisfied without clinging and desperately needing and being in that true thirsty energy for people and situations and circumstances and your health and your children and your pets and whatever else, your bank balance, and you are no longer being in this opposing force energy and digging yourself further and further and further away from the feelings that you are actually longing for in life. So being really strategic with your energy and your perception and taking the energy and emotions and feelings that you want from stuff into your own hands can impact not only your peace of mind and the harmony within your own energy, but it ultimately, the more that you can hold and sustain the feelings and emotions and energy of the things you want, the faster and more likely they are to be drawn into your energy field. And this is also helpful when thinking about what energy you're holding under the law of 100%, because in any energetic system, there is only 100% of the pieces that we can hold. So when we're by ourselves, we're holding all the pieces. When we're in a couple, the energy is dispersed. The 100% of the different qualities and attributes within that system are dispersed between the participants to the system. So for example, easy example I've spoken about before. If you are in a relationship where you hold 90% of the I make all the plans energy, then the other parties to that dynamic can only hold 10% of the I make the plans energy. And so you have to relinquish and give up some of your 90% in order for the other party to the system to pick up that energy. And not only is this fabulous because the energy is more even, so everyone feels more harmonious, but it really reduces the level of resentment. Now, I am often in family environments where I feel like I hold all the I need to fill in all the silences energy. And I take on 95% of the I make conversation energy. And relinquishing deliberately some of that energy so that other people, because if I'm holding all those energetic pieces, no one else can take part in making of conversation. So I had this recently where I just deliberately foregoed some of my holding all the I am responsible for making all the conversation and filling all the silences and making sure that everyone's having a fantastic engaged time at the dinner table. I started to relinquish some of those energetic parts, and I had to sit uncomfortably for a minute or two, but lo and behold, the other parties to the energetic system started to pick up those pieces. And, you know, we get ourselves twisted into knots because we take on energetic pieces that we don't want to in any given dynamic. And it's very, very subtle and often unconscious. You know, coming back to parenting, like our children have so many excellent ideas, and, you know, as the mum, we usually have a plan and an idea of how the day's going to go and what we're going to do and what we're going to eat, what everyone needs to be doing at any given time. And often our sense of control and wanting the plan to go a certain way is coming from a fear-based place. You know, we want to feel in control. We want to feel like everyone is being productive and doing what they need to do. But, you know, our children are the most excellent, you know, unprogrammed, unconditioned, you know, brilliant little sparks of energy. And the more that we can relinquish some of our control and allow them and their ideas to have room to breathe, not only will it reduce so much opposing force between us, but it often makes the day go better. You know, I have found since my kids were tiny, teeny little toddlers, that if I relinquish the I make the plans energy and I've got, you know, a map of what we're doing today, if I relinquish some of those pieces and allow my children to follow their nose and their intuition and their pulls, and I don't oppose some of their sparks of genius or not, then not only does the law of opposing forces start to dissipate and we're not butting heads, but it keeps a check on the feelings that you're trying to get from making things go a certain way, which are all things we can just give to ourselves. And it just makes for a much more harmonious unfolding of any given situation. So you may be surprised at how much you oppose or you are taking up a force of opposition in your life to certain plans, health outcomes, relationship dynamics, and even just mentally start, if you are interested in playing with the law of opposing forces, Start to embrace some of the things that are just absolutely hell no's for you. Start to determine the exact feelings that you're trying to get from the things you really, really want, and start to relinquish pieces of the 100% of whatever attribute it is that you no longer want to hold, and to start to see how pleasant life can be. And in doing that, you will get your opposition down to the things you don't want, so that they don't have to take up that complementary position and be sucked into your life. You will start to be the source of your own empowerment and your own feelings of safety, security, adequacy, acknowledgement, recognition, and truly start to empower from within. And you will start to lower your levels of resentment and frustration by allowing some of the pieces of energy within certain relationships and systems that you don't want to hold to be taken off your plate and picked up by other parties to the system. So this week, see if you can start to go about your day noticing how to work with instead of against the law of opposing forces, the law that anything that exists physically first has to exist energetically, and the law of 100%. And as always, let me know how you go. I love getting your comments, DMs, and shout outs. And if there's something that you are really, really wanting to achieve, or if there's something you just feel really stuck on, whether it's health, money, relationships, career, a dream, a goal, and you want intuitive guidance and deeper understanding of these laws and how to create things energetically and how to get your want down and improve the harmony within your energetic systems, aka relationships, then I would absolutely be honored to guide you, give you every single tool and energetic law that I have and know and use for your own life. DM me, head to my website, and sending you all big love and excellent energy in your week ahead. Thank you so much for being here today. If you want to keep hanging out, because I sure do, then head to my Instagram @PhoebeSgram or my website, phoebestuart.com.